Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Judith Batty, Interim Chief Executive Officer of Girl Scouts of the USA, and I would like to welcome you to this Campfire chat, setting long-term goals and working towards them. But before we begin, I'd like to share a little bit about the Girl Scout Network. We are a community of adults, Girl Scout alum, and supporters from across the country who feel passionately about supporting girls and one another. If you're reconnecting with us or connecting with us for the first time, welcome to the Girl Scout community. During our campfire chat, successful women, many of them Girl Scout alums, share their stories to both educate and inspire. As you know, setting and achieving goals is an integral part of the Girl Scout experience. We encourage girls to set goals when they're earning their badges or selling cookies, and it's a lesson our alums carry with them throughout their lives. Learning how to set goals through our Girl Scout programming sets girls up for success in school and later in life. In fact, 87% of Girl Scout alums say they have successfully met their life goals, and part of that is because they learned how to set goals in Girl Scouts. And here's a secret that we've learned over the more than century of nurturing girls' dreams. Girls sell more boxes of cookies if they set a goal, even if they don't reach that goal. So simply setting a goal is the first step in setting yourself up for success. And even if you don't reach the goal in the time frame you wanted, you're more likely to go further than if you had not set a goal at all. Even if you reach for the moon, even if you don't get to, there's a saying that my mother used to say, you always set a goal, and even you reach for the moon, and even if you don't get there, you're still in the stars. That's it. My mother was a smart woman and a Girl Scout. And one more thing before we get started. We'll be moderating the chat log, so share your questions with the panelists and don't be afraid to ask anything. And if you're inclined to share what you've learned this evening, please tag your social posts with Campfire, hashtag Campfire Chats, and at Girl Scouts. To watch this event with live captioning, follow the link in the chat. And now I'm thrilled to introduce to you our moderator for this evening, Rebecca Jarvis, Chief Business, Economics, and Technology Correspondent for ABC News.
Judith, thank you so much for that kind intro. And hello, everyone. It's so nice to be with all of you here. I cover business, technology, and economics for ABC News, and I host a podcast called No Limits with Rebecca Jarvis, where I have conversations with game-changing women like Judith and like so many of the women you will be hearing from tonight. And I'm thrilled to moderate this Girl Scout Network Campfire chat on career goals. I was a brownie. I was thinking about it, trying to do the math, probably about 30 years ago. And had I known that this was the future, it might not have been an exact goal, but it's certainly this moment would have been up there as the peak, the height of all of my greatest expectations coming to fruition. So it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. And we have with us an incredible panel of women who are leaders from across a wide variety of industries. Ann Chow wasn't able to be with us today, but we are so pleased to welcome Sarita Rao, who is president of AT&T Business. Ann Choquette is the founder of New Power Media and the CEO of The List. Rhonesha Byng is the founder and CEO of Her Agenda. So welcome to all of you. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here. Thank you.
So I wanted to begin with a little bit of background on each of you. And if you'd like, feel free to share some of your experience with the Girl Scouts. But I'm also hoping that we can really hone in on a particular moment along your career path that you really think helped set the trajectory. Anne, why don't we start with you?
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I am thrilled to be here. I am a tremendous fan of the Girl Scouts. I was also a brownie growing up in Littleton, Colorado. I also was incredibly ambitious, Judith, about selling my Girl Scout cookies. I don't know if can you still go door to door? I literally went door to door. I think the cookies were like $1.25 back then. So times have changed because I've just bought an entire case of caramel delights and they were more than $1.25 a box. But good luck for the Girl Scouts. So a moment in my career that set me up for long-term success. And the funny thing is, I did not do a lot of long-term planning. I never had a 5-year plan. I became editor-in-chief of 17. Never really imagined myself as editor-in-chief until it was within my reach. I then went on to write a book. I never imagined that I would write a book. I am now living an entrepreneur's life, which is totally a different idea from how I had such a traditional corporate hierarchy. And so sort of the ongoing mantra that I hold on to in my life is try everything. And I really love treading into new territory and seeing if I can figure it out. And it is, look, we have bills to pay, we have families we need to support, and we all have responsibilities. This is not like freewheeling, like try everything, have a great time, drop out. We are ambitious women, right? With goals and dreams. But I think that if you get too locked into one idea of the way your career should go, the way your life should go, that you miss a lot of stuff along the way. And you you give yourself too much rigidity to be able to react to what's happening in the moment. This was the year that I became an entrepreneur, and a lot of it had to do with necessity. I needed to be flexible and available and to run my own show, and that's how this year went. So keep your eyes open for opportunity and trust yourself to be able to capitalize on the moment.
Rhonesha, you're on the Forbes 30 Under 30, one of 50's top entrepreneurs by Essence magazine. Talk a little bit about your path.
Yeah, so just to go back to your question about, I guess, the moment where it sort of shifted my career or kick-started it, it actually happened pretty early in my life. I was 16 years old when I discovered my purpose and passion for storytelling and journalism. And in hindsight, it really makes sense. I was always the kid that loved to read. I read like a book a day. I really taught myself to read actually when I was 4 years old. I taught myself how to read because I grew up in New York City. There's advertisements everywhere. And so those are all words. And I wanted to understand the world that I was in, what was surrounding me. So I saw a commercial for Hooked on Phonics, asked my mom if she could send it to me, and literally diligently as a 4-year-old sat at my grandmother's dining room table, kitchen table every day after daycare and taught myself how to read. So I knew how to read before I got to school. I knew that words and stories could shift people's perspectives, shift people's worlds. And so I was 16 again when I discovered journalism, but I didn't recognize it as my purpose immediately. And that's something I want to highlight. You know, sometimes when something is your purpose and you have a natural skill set for it, you take it for granted. I was always called nosy as a kid, which is curiosity, which is actually a positive thing. I love to research. I love to be the first to know information, which are all skills that align with journalism. But still, I never recognized that as a career path until I was in high school. And even still, my teacher had to force me to join the high school newspaper after he saw my talent in my journalism class. So fast forward, that's my foundation, journalism. Once I figured out the bigger impact that journalism could have on the world, I really hit the ground running and started doing celebrity interviews, going to press conferences, and writing my own stories from what I felt like was an underrepresented group at the time, which was stories about teens from the minds and perspective of teens. So from that, it evolved into now today I'm an entrepreneur, and I founded my own media company, which is called Her Agenda. But it started from that spark when I was 16, where I kind of already had the skill sets within me, but then that helped the skills make sense and aligned and led me to where I am today.
Thank you. And Sarita, you are one of the most high profile, powerful people inside of one of the largest companies in the country. Talk a little bit about your path there and a big decision that led to that role.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much. For me, I think it's a combination of things. It's been about being open-minded about something, because many times others see in you what you don't see in yourself. Sometimes I get a little caught up on what's at my desk or what project I'm in the middle of. I actually don't sometimes, kind of visors on, and it could probably be a bit of a self-confidence thing, right, where someone else sees it in you. So I will tell you, every time someone has asked me to take on something new, I have said yes. I've been fortunate enough to work in an environment where I trust those around me, because I do believe they see something in me that I don't see in myself sometimes. And over the years, as I've gotten, and that would be young Sarita, right? When I came right out of college, when I was sort of learning the career ropes and so forth, I always wanted to try something different every time. But as I think of sort of that next generation, that's something I really try and focus on the teams that I mentor in the organization. I feel so fortunate that I had folks that I could trust that would challenge me to do something new. So I remember one day they asked me if I'd moved to New Jersey. I said, sure. And I remember going and telling my family, they're like, you've never been to New Jersey? And I'm like, nope. And I just agreed to move there, right? And, same thing when I moved to Dallas and so forth. I love my home in Chicago, but I always knew to do something different, I'd have to put myself out there. So whether it be geography or that next assignment. I remember, telling a boss once, I don't want to lead a product job. I'm not very technical. And he just looked at me and goes, it's the right job for you, trust me. And soon enough, within a year, that product team was winning awards, not because of me, because of being able to trust and having being very open-minded. So for me, it's always about taking that stretch, taking that challenge, and be willing to say yes, and keeping your mind open.
There are things about all of your stories that remind me of myself and my own story. And one thing that I think you all touched on in various ways is we can have goals and not know how we're going to get to those goals. I started out, I wanted to be a journalist at some point in my life. I didn't know when that point was even going to take place. And if you had asked the me sitting in a circle in the Brownies in Minneapolis, Minnesota, how do you become a journalist on Good Morning America, I would have had no answer for you. I didn't know anybody who had a job like that. I didn't have a single connection that would have led me there. But what I did along my career journey, and it's something I'm hearing from all of you, is I took great opportunities and I also pursued them. But when an interesting opportunity that spoke to my curiosity came along, I said yes. And I think that has really helped me get a lot of different experiences over my career, both realizing the things I want and the things that I don't want. I started out my path graduating from college with a lot of student loan debt. And I realized pretty quickly that if I were to pursue the journalist route, when I was looking at the numbers, that paying off those student loans was not going to happen on a journalist salary. So I started to think about how I could do some of the things I liked, but still also be able to make my bill payments. And I ended up pursuing finance for a few years. I didn't realize in that moment in pursuing finance that would ultimately be the thing that would get me in a newsroom someday, because it was my background and my knowledge of business and the markets that helped me get in the door in the first place and get my first journalism jobs. So I think that for me has been a really big lesson in my life, to take the opportunities that I am most excited about, and also to always be looking for whatever it is that makes you special in something. In the environment of journalism, it was my background, and your background, you have such a connection to so many different worlds. You started out at 17 magazine. People have seen you all over TV over the years, in part because of that job early on. But one of the questions I have is, how do you, once you're in this world of pursuing opportunities, how do you hone in on the ones that are worth your time? Because it can also be a world of, every email that comes in that inbox, every invitation, every idea, every tweet that elicits some interest on your part that you could reply to. Those all take up time, in addition to our families, in addition to bosses and all of the other demands. So how do you think through where it's worth your time to pursue it and where it's not?
I love that question. And I love this group of women here. This is an amazing group of women. What Sarita said about saying yes to everything is one of my mantras. Say yes to everything until it's time to say no. And when you say yes to everything, like, you get a lot of experience and feedback. You say yes to the coffees, you say yes to the meetings. I mean, I can't believe you said yes to moving to New Jersey, and your family said yes too, which I think is pretty amazing. But at some point, you start to realize, I don't need to say yes to that again. It wasn't a great experience. It didn't fuel my soul. It didn't give me passion. I didn't really like those people that I was working with. Whatever it was, you don't have to say yes to it again once you've said yes the first time. And eventually, all the things you say yes to sort of line up around your core values. So I say yes to communities of women, to conversations about supporting the next generation, right? I say yes to the Girl Scouts. The Girl Scouts call, I say yes to the Girl Scouts. This is an organization I believe in. But there's a lot of things I say no to that aren't aligned with my work or my values, and I'm happy to pass those along to someone else, right? To those opportunities to someone else, because it's going to be the yes for someone else.
That's a great point. So what I was wondering as a follow-up to that, and I'm throwing it out to Rhonesha and Sarita as well, when you say no, is there a way that you elegantly say no? In other words, have you sort of come up with, Rhonesha, I like your face right now, so I feel like you've come up with a way to elegantly turn things down.
I never like to burn bridges, and I am aligned with what Anne said. When I was first starting, I literally did everything under the sun, and most of the time I did it for free. And so now that I am a CEO, an entrepreneur, I have to be more strategic with my time. And so the way that I say no is just by explaining to them why it's not the right fit, and explaining to them also, if they've come to me with an offer or opportunity that doesn't quite meet our minimum of expectations, I explain what our expectations are in terms of what is needed for me to participate, and ask them to come back to me when they have that. If it's a matter of budget, sometimes that's what it is. And I say, this is typically my rate, so hopefully you can get to that point, and once you get to that point, then we can work together again. It feels weird though in the beginning, because it feels like when you first start, every opportunity is your only opportunity. Like, if I say no, this person is going to go away forever and they're never going to commit to come to me again. But that's not true, and that's something that we need to talk about more. You can say no, and you can still keep the relationship, keep in touch, and when it's the right fit for both sides, it will happen.
I'm so glad you made that point, because I think, that to me is so key in all of this. There is that fear that if you say no, you're never getting another shot. But one thing, and I think what you just mentioned is really valuable advice, you can keep a relationship going without saying yes to the really big, significant thing. And you can also really put it out there, the type of opportunity that you are looking for. We're also getting questions from our listeners, our audience who are participating in this. And I wanted to ask this one of you, Sarita, because you talked a lot about the importance of people inside of your organization seeing opportunities for you, pushing you into opportunities that would work and be really positive for you. How have you developed mentoring relationships, both as a mentor to people and also being mentored?
This is probably one of the biggest life lessons I had. I grew up in an environment with sort of heads down, do your work, and then someone's going to notice. Sometimes that takes a little bit of time. So you've got to be out there. You've got to be advocating for yourself, and there is just nothing wrong with it. Women, I think, sometimes don't like to say work is a priority or networking is a priority. Frankly, that's what we're competing with, right? So I think that's really important. If I look at my own good fortune, is I had somebody who sponsored me, not just a mentor, but somebody who sponsored me, someone who advocated for me when I wasn't in the room. And I think that helped me a great deal. And that's something I earned over the years and built that confidence and so forth. It was great. It was great for me personally from a career perspective. It really helped me just really navigate my career and have multiple different types of experience, whether it be operations or finance or sales or product, or, I just ran advertising for our organization. So very different functions, very different jobs. As I take that lesson and what I learned from that and the value I received from it, for me, that's my time now to pay that forward. So when there is something that I can't do, I love to present alternatives if I have to say no to something. And this is a great opportunity for a speaking engagement, as an example, to bring somebody else into the organization and give them that opportunity to shine. And I find that's been very helpful. But I'm very big on not only having that group of folks that I'll mentor and do casual conversations with and give advice to, but also a small group, not a very large group, to be honest with you, because you really want to invest to make it right, but a small group of folks that I like to sponsor, whether it be within AT&T or outside of AT&T, but somebody that I'm really advocating for, because I know they're going to be superstars. I know they're going to just go knock it out of the park. And I think that's really important. I think it's important to know who those folks are in your life. And it's not a long list, right? You can't expect a long list of folks to be your sponsors or your advocates. It's a small list, right? And those are the folks that you really have to go invest in. To me, it's as important to go deep as it is to go broad.
That speaks also to the point, and Anne brought this up too, when you are turning something down, to always think about someone else who could benefit from that opportunity and linking them into that conversation. Sarita, you mentioned this idea that you started your career head down, really focused on doing the work and getting recognized that way. And I'm sure there are people watching right now who are in that position. I certainly am one of those people who spent so much of my early career thinking, if I work harder, if I show up first, if I leave last, someone's going to notice it. And there was, for me, a little bit of a turning point of, actually, you have to, for me, it wasn't, it was kind of like, you have to make sure that people know you're doing that. Not tapping them on the shoulder and saying, by the way, I get here first in the mornings and I leave last, but just showing the value to the organization. And I wonder how you did that. The first time you took that step, what was something you did?
I would tell you probably just sitting at the table. I would many times go into a conference room and not sit at the table, like physically at it. I'd sit in the background. And as a leader, it might have been to give someone else an opportunity, right? You kind of confuse yourself on all the reasons why you're not sitting at the table. It's important to kind of sit at the table, and it's important to speak up. So I would know the answer, but I wouldn't lean in and speak up. So I found myself doing that more. It's a great way of telling folks you know what you're talking about. And frankly, if I was wrong or someone needed to, kind of adjust the way I might have presented something, that was okay, because I learned something there too. But I think speaking up was a great way of doing it. I wholeheartedly agree with you, Rebecca. It's not about walking around tapping someone on the shoulder, telling them what time you come into the office, right? Show them by executing on the work and exhibiting it and being able to demonstrate that what you're trying to build towards, the journey that you're on. And I think that's important.
Okay, we have a question from an audience member. I like this one a lot because it's very pressing. It's urgent. I just graduated from college with a Bachelor of Science 3 days ago, and I am not exactly sure what to do with it. I came here to help set goals with finding a first future career. Are there any helpful hints? Anne, what does she do? Tell us.
Okay. I actually cover this territory in my book, The Big Life.
Yes.
It is about those first years where you are crafting who you are meant to be. And my advice for you is to get a job, any job, right? Your first couple of years of work are about learning how work works. Pay attention to the way meetings are conducted. How does somebody get command respect? How do they take control of the room? How are they gracious and thankful to the people around the table, right? Model those behaviors. I also, when I was a young reporter, I used to sit in a big pit and listen to how the other reporters were asking their questions. And that's how I learned how to become a reporter. So it is your time now to soak up the world. And to be honest, it doesn't have to be your dream job. It doesn't have to even be in your industry. You're just there to learn the relationships, how work works, to get some ground under your feet. And one other piece of advice, because it is very unlikely now to be your dream job, right? It's going to be the job you need to pay the bills, get started in the world, to make sure you keep your apartment. And so I highly recommend a side hustle. And I know that everybody has a side hustle these days, right? But your side hustle is not the thing that's going to bring in extra money. Your side hustle is the way you pay yourself in self-respect. If you are just starting out at the bottom and it's not going to be fun or enjoyable or a lot of praise, get the job where you put yourself into the role that you want to have in the world. When I was sitting in the pit learning how to become a reporter, on the side, I had launched a website and I was the editor-in-chief of my own digital publication. And look, I messed up severely all the time, but I messed up on my own time and in my own world. And then when it was time for me to be able to step into that role, to step into more senior roles, I'd kind of already had some practice and like gotten some things right. So my one takeaway for you is get a job, any job.
Excellent advice. Sometimes I think I definitely have allowed the perfect to become the enemy of the good in my life, and it can keep you from just action. And I think sometimes action propels greater activity, and inaction keeps you in this state of, it can cause anxiety, it can cause uncertainty, and sometimes just doing something gets the wheels turning. Rhonesha, I would love it. If you have anything to add to that, I would love it. I also want to ask you, as an entrepreneur, because there's certainly the upside of being an entrepreneur, and you write your own ticket, you're in control of your message, you get to choose every day the work that you're going to do. It's also scary. It is gigantic in terms of the responsibility and the obstacles that you face. And one of our audience members asked, what would you say if someone felt like they want to give up?
Wow, that's huge. So I want to start by saying I wholeheartedly agree with everything Anne shared. A lot of the times, young people especially feel like their first job will define them for the rest of their lives. It does not. It is absolutely still a training ground. You can think of it almost like an extension of the college experience. You don't necessarily need to put it even on your resume. Just get the money that you need, the experience you need, just hustle. It's the hustle mode after college. And tap back into those relationships, all of those professors that maybe once upon a time worked in the industry, shadow people, just constantly reach out, and don't be afraid to be rejected. I think even today as an entrepreneur, I send at least one, I call it like a reach email, or a almost kind of too big, too far out there email, where I'll email somebody a cold email that I'm thinking will never answer me back. And actually about 50% of the time they will answer me back. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. And for me as an entrepreneur, like you said, I get to determine my days and I get to set my own priorities. And it is very hard, especially, you know, and there's more downs than ups. You see a lot of the ups, but there are more downs than ups. And what keeps me going is that it's not just about the bottom line. It's not just about the title or the job of entrepreneur. I'm really a purpose-led founder. And so for me, I think about, one, the sacrifices that allowed me to have the freedom to be a founder and entrepreneur. As a Black woman CEO, there's not many of us that get a chance to sit in the seat. And I think about my ancestors that came before me and the sacrifices that they made. I also think immediately about my mentors that poured into me. And if I was to give up or let my feelings of doubt stop me from pursuing my goals, it's almost like a slap in the face to them. And I want to make sure that their investment pays off, and their investment in terms of just inspiring me in general, but also their advice and their time. And then I always think about the next generation. So whenever I'm asked to speak, whenever I'm asked to do something that makes me afraid, I remember early in my entrepreneurial career, I was asked to speak at a big conference hosted by the Obama administration at the White House. And I thought, oh, maybe I should wait until I have a little more experience. Maybe I should wait until I have a little bit more data to talk about. But I did it anyway because I knew that I had to, because the person who was sitting in the seat on the other side of the stage would see me and see themselves in me and understand that it's possible to go from being for me specifically, I'm a girl from Brooklyn, New York, whose family had no connections in the media industry, went on to become a journalist and went on to found my own media company. And if they could see that it's possible, they could know that they could do anything. And that's the thought that keeps me going. It's a lot, it's a responsibility, but also it's something that inspires me to keep pushing because it's bigger than me. And I think when you have a goal that is bigger than you and you understand what your why is, that will keep you going and help you to push past that fear. And everyone who is in a position that is pursuing their purpose or that is on a path to achieving goals, what I've learned is they all feel fear, they all feel anxious, but you have to tap into being courageous and brave. And so in spite of those feelings, still push forward and just take things one day at a time. We can get overwhelmed when we think about the long term, but just take things day by day.
Yes.
I know. I love that. Sorry, I'm just so moved.
This is where the audience stands up. Woohoo! But everything that all of you are saying, I think is just so powerful and valuable. And something, Rhonesha, that you just said, I was thinking about a circle as you're talking, because you're reaching out to people who you feel like are a reach. That's one aspect of the circle. You're reaching out to people in your community. It's this giant, the circle gets bigger and bigger with each of these steps. And I find oftentimes as that circle gets bigger, you refine some of the things that your thoughts, you can test new ideas as that circle gets larger. You also learn about new things, new skills that you could get, new opportunities. So it's really, I just love that visual representation when people are thinking about networks. It's not just a one-way direction. That network is
forward while reaching back. And there's a common phrase of lifting as you climb as well, which is what I subscribe to.
100%. So one of the things, and this is also coming up in the questions, but one of the realities, especially of this last year and the pandemic, has been the number of women who lost jobs, 5.4 million since the pandemic began. And also that giant number, 2.1 million women who left the labor force to focus in many cases on childcare or as caregivers. And I want to touch on that here because there's clearly a moment happening right now, but even without the pandemic, that really put it into light. But even without the pandemic, the reality is that women over-index in care for their families, over-index in care for their extended families, frequently have the choices and the really tough choices. And I'd love to get into some of the decision making in our careers, and also if there are any life hacks or things that have come up along the way. Sarita, maybe we can start with you on that topic.
Sure. I mean, change is definitely hard, right? And I think this past year definitely has been a challenge for the workforce. But I think that also brings opportunity out there, right? Typically, when you see downturns like this, you see an increase in entrepreneurship. And then if you think about how much technology has changed, right? You don't have to have a bricks and mortar store. You can do things online. You don't have to have a restaurant. You can have pop-up cooking experiences. So there's different ways to be creative if you want to enter into that entrepreneurial world. if you want to enter into the corporate world, then go look for those corporations. I think it's been a eye-opening for a number of them. If I just think of the company that I'm at, I think of how many benefits rolled out during this past year that are far more supportive of folks that have to look at long-term care, extended leave, opportunities to take that break you need for your family, an extension of paternity leave, an extension of maternity leave. So I think, and elder care leave, right? So I think there's a lot more out there that's happening. So don't assume the benefits of yesterday are the benefits of tomorrow. You have that opportunity to really do a little bit of research to find companies that are female friendly, to find companies that are going to understand what you're working through. And I think there's also an opportunity to have that conversation with your leadership team to be able to create some of that flexibility. But I do believe that there's an opportunity for us to take, this really rough time and really just change the culture. And that happens with all of us together, right? We have to really kind of bond through what our kind of important priorities are. But I think there's a silver lining in this. I think there's a silver lining in some of the changes that I think we can all help push and really pull each other up through this process. It's not going to be easy, but I think there's opportunity here.
And I see you shaking your head in agreement.
Yeah, so this is one of the most important conversations about women that we can have, is how do we keep women engaged in work? And I actually wrote the cover story for Parents Magazine a couple of months ago about this crisis that is facing working women, particularly working mothers now. And the takeaway for me in reporting that story was that this is not a problem that you, individual woman, can solve, right? That this is not, we so often think like, I'll just work harder, I'll just get by with less, I can add in extra hours, I can spend a little less time with my kids, if I don't see my husband, it's okay. Like we try to solve these problems ourselves. We think that we can hack our way out of them. And this is not a problem that we can hack our way out of, right? This requires policy change. This requires companies, amazing, innovative companies like Sarita is talking about what's happening at AT&T. And so it also, it's very clarifying for a lot of people, right? For a lot of women who suddenly the work that they do at home and in their and at work is sort of laid bare for everybody to see. When my company is called New Power Media, and to me, New Power is this idea of transparency. You can see into my life. There is total transparency. You are now looking into my home office, right? Like it's collaboration. We could not have gotten through this year without the idea of collaboration. How can we support each other? How can we help each other? Those are the keys those are the changes that we need. Those are the changes that are being led. I have tremendous hope that we're going to come out on the other side of this crisis, and not soon, not like immediately the minute we get back to work, but that there is a significant change in the way we think about women in work and what are their responsibilities and what are we expecting. How are we supporting families and how are we supporting half the workforce? And so I really have great hope that I have hope for women. I have hope that we're going to be on the other side of this crisis, looking at much better work for everyone.
I wonder, because it is systemic, and you talk about the issue that there's no wave the magic wand, do the right thing, it all resolves itself. Have you seen, for example, a conversation or a way of having the conversation for women, especially if you do work for a larger company, that leads to an outcome that isn't, I'm going to leave the workforce because there's just no alternative right now, and I hope that changes eventually come so I can get back in?
I would say,
sorry.
I was going to say, one of the things that I think we've seen this year is we can all work in different environments. in remote environments. We can be in this virtual environment and give ourselves a bit more flexibility. I don't know about you guys, but how many times have you been on a WebEx now where, you know, someone's child is in the room or someone's dog is barking in the background and so forth? It's not a distraction. It's just part of life. I think one thing that, you know, the pandemic gave us was, and Anne, I think you just said this, right? It's bringing someone into your home, right? Typically, I wouldn't have this conversation with you being in a kitchen. I'd be in an office somewhere. So I think it's given us that, and it's helped us get productivity, but that means you also have to learn different skills because you're not going to have some of those water cooler conversations. So I'm hoping this is sort of that rhythm we keep coming up with, and we keep evolving in, because when someone tells me now that they have to work a different set of hours, I'm not thinking anymore, how's that going to work? Because we've just gone through it for a year. So I think there is a broader way or a wider range of thinking that we didn't have before. And to me, that's one of the silver linings here as well.
I hope my kids didn't hear you say that that it wouldn't be a distraction, because I keep telling them it's a huge distraction. But
Well,
I also think,
go ahead, Anne.
I also think that women like Sarita, who are in positions to lead their team by example, right, and to say that's okay, or to talk about you know, bringing your whole self to work. We don't have a choice. Like your whole self is at work now. One of the things that someone told me, which I really thought was smart, was that now is the time to really be who you are and ask for what you need, because companies need you and they want to give you what you need to succeed. And rather than do the traditional, like, it's fine, I'll figure it out, don't worry about me, right? This is the time to say, like, this is what I need.
That's good advice. Yeah, I was wondering if you guys could hear my daughter, who's 2, yelling in the background. Anyway, rolling with it is what we do. I really like this question. It can go to anyone, but Rhonesha, you haven't had a chance to jump in a minute, so I'll put it to you, and feel free to punt to anywhere else. But I like it. It says, if you get rejected or told no, how does it affect you?
For me, of all people to get this question, is hilarious, because the amount of rejection that I get on a daily basis, you have no idea. And that goes back to what I was saying before. You see often the wins, and I try to be more transparent about the missteps or the failures along the way. But for example, over the past year, there have been a number of companies that have pledged to support women-owned businesses or Black women entrepreneurs, and a number of amazing programs and grant opportunities have come to fruition from that promise. And I will tell you, I applied to grants like it was a full-time job. I was applying on a daily basis, literally in March 2020, when everything essentially stopped. That was the only thing that I could do to be productive. And so every day I was applying, and then I started to get rejection after rejection after rejection. But one thing I didn't do is I didn't stop because of those rejections. I just reevaluated what my responses were. I checked in with my peers. I checked in with mentors to get feedback on how I could become better. One thing that I really learned early on in my career is that feedback is a gift. But it's really hard to get real feedback because you have to be vulnerable. You have to show, you know, your work before you show it to the world, to someone else, when it's sort of in a raw form, or something that you've been spending maybe your whole life pouring into. And it can be hard, especially I've learned for women. It seems like we really intertwine our professional objective with our personal self-worth. And I think that needs to stop, first of all. But, you know, it's something that's real, and that makes it harder to be vulnerable and to get that feedback that we need. And it also reminds me of early in my career, sometimes your rejection can be really the universe protecting you, or or re-steering you towards where you need to go. So in 2015 is when I actually went full-time as an entrepreneur. I'm I've been full-time as an entrepreneur for 6 years now, but I started her agenda in 2008. So it's been 13 years in total. So that shows you it's been quite a journey, too long to really go into detail on this panel. But early on, I had to decide if I was going to raise money from venture capitalists and investors, or if I was going to bootstrap my company and figure out a way to make revenue. So I attempted to raise money and experienced a lot of pushback in the form of what's really rooted in racism, but comes out in like unconscious bias with the questions that I get asked in investor meetings. Whereas if I was, a different gender or a different race, I wouldn't be asked those type of questions. Often, if you're a person of color and you're a founder of a tech company or a media company, you have to really prove that you can scale. And versus if I was a different gender, it would be based off of my potential, what they think I could do, because they believed in me. So I decided to just pause that path and think about how I could actually make money with her agenda. And that actually ended up being our saving grace in the last year. So what we did was we actually created revenue that tapped into our audience. So our audience paid us monthly or yearly to get access to a private community we started. And so that was in 2015. We started a paid digital community in 2015 because we couldn't raise money from investors. Now fast forward to 2020, 2021, literally everyone has a digital community that they're trying to monetize. And so we came into this environment with already a system in place, and that was something that was a response to a rejection or a misdirection that happened early on in our journey. So really my response to rejection is to just not take it personally, keep going, check in with mentors and advisors and peers. I find my peer mentors to be the most valuable. And just keep going. Don't stop.
That's so valuable. And you even made a point earlier about the emails that you send out and really focusing on the people who reply to you. That is something, it took me a long, long time in my career to get to a point where I could really focus on that, but it's so much better. And it's a numbers game too. Statistically, you send enough messages, you throw it out enough times, you're gonna start getting the people who come back to you. And also, something else that I have also come to realize is that if I send an email that doesn't get responded to, or I put a phone call out and there's no response, my initial response used to be, especially early in my career, I don't matter. That person got the message and thought, well, I don't want to talk to Rebecca. I don't have time for Rebecca. She's boring. She doesn't have anything to offer me. The reality is probably more along the lines of this busy person didn't even get your message. They didn't even realize that you reached out to them in the first place. By the way, and I don't know how you handle this, Rhonesha, I keep reaching out to people. Like, I kind of have no shame. I interviewed a founder once who called it being a limited stalker. And I kind of love that idea. Like, if there's someone you really need to reach and it's make or break, then I say just keep doing it. Keep going back every couple of weeks, because you're not, in my opinion, you're not really going to be put on the list of actual stalkers. People will eventually get back to you, and you'll just have to figure it out from there. Any other, Anne or Sarita, any other thoughts you wanted to weigh in on this topic of rejection and the word no?
I think that every single time that you're told no, it's making you tougher and stronger for the next time, right? You are getting smarter, you're getting more information. How are you going to get to yes next time? I tell a story now about all the jobs I didn't get that helped me, like, okay, I won't do that again. I need to be smarter about this. And also, every time it's an experience that you are getting stronger, that you are putting into your basket. And so you'll know how to walk into that room and command the room, and you'll know how to make the pitch, and you'll know how to send the email so that it gets noticed. And you can't learn those things. Nobody can tell you how to do those things. You have to do them by getting them wrong and fixing it the next time. And it's maybe not the next time, maybe it's 3 times down the line. But look, you know, this is the long game. We're in it. We're in it to get better and smarter and stronger and tougher for the next fight.
I want to tap into this idea, and Judith actually mentioned this at the beginning about Girl Scouts and selling cookies. And if you start out with a goal, you end up selling more cookies. Studies show that you're actually 42% more likely to achieve a goal if you write it down. Do any of you raise your hand? Do you write your goals down? Okay. I'm being kind of honest. I don't write them down. Sarita, how do you do it when you write them down?
I don't really do a lot of long-term goals. You know, and you said this earlier, the 5-year plan. I remember someone sat me down and asked me what my 5-year plan was. And I just remember looking at them going, there's so much change, right? Like to me, if you have that rigid 5-year plan, that means you're not ready for change. So for me, I'm a 30, 60, 90 day, quarter by quarter kind of person.
Yeah.
So I'll write them down from that perspective. And we even have tooling that we just launched, and I haven't been playing with it yet. But I kind of just have a simple list and so forth. You know, everyone has a different way of doing it, but everything is a bit of a sprint to me. And that's how I like to look at things. I want to make sure we're prepared for the quarter at hand. Rebecca, you know this, just, you know, based on what you do day to day and the businesses and the leaders you talk to, change is inevitable. So the best way to me to get prepared for that change is to be open-minded and not say, but this doesn't fit into my 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been very adamant about keeping it kind of a quarterly sprint, and then making sure we revisit those goals, adjust them as we go. I keep it as simple as possible. I keep things, you know, it's literally in the notes section of my iPhone because that's what I always have handy. And that's kind of how I like to manage it. I'm pretty scrappy that way with my use of tech.
Rhonesha, are you religious about writing down your goals?
I am and I'm not. So this is what my routine is. I am a big believer in vision boards. And so at the top of the year, I actually will create a vision board. And sometimes I'll do a new one, but how I am is sometimes I'll just remix it, because if the full vision board didn't come to fruition, I'm thinking, okay, I need to keep this another year and maybe remove and add some things. So that's how I sort of set the tone. I set a vision for the year. And then in terms of the day-to-day, I always have a notebook where I write things down, because I really believe in making it real and putting it from my brain and making it something that is living in the world. And the first way of doing that is to write it down. The other part of it is talking about it. And so I talked before about my peers, and just speaking things out loud and leaning into my community will then create accountability partners. Because if I say, this is what I'm doing, this is what my goal is, and I share it with even just one person, and they check in and they're like, how's this going? And I haven't made any progress, then I look like a fraud. Then I look like I am not impeccable with my word. I have no integrity, which is not the things that I want to be known for. And so speaking it out loud after you write it out is really key in making sure that it comes to fruition, and also helps your community to understand where you are in your life and your career, and it helps them to set you up for success by sharing opportunities. You can't be everywhere. And often my biggest opportunities come from what I've learned. I can't remember who started this term, but sort of my loose ties, and people who I don't necessarily speak to on a day-to-day basis, but who are in my network, who keep up with me loosely, and they'll think of me because I regularly vocalize what I'm working on, what my goals are. And so I start with the vision board. I write things down on a day-to-day. Sometimes I try to do a thing where I got advice from a mentor to like take the goals that you have and convert it to your calendar, and actually take those goals and put them on the calendar. I kind of am flexible with that, but I'm always talking about my goals out loud to my community, to my mentors, to make sure I have those accountability partners, which has been a real key in my success.
Totally. I always say it out loud. So then there's that accountability factor. Okay, we have about 3 to 4 minutes left, and I want to try and get to as many additional questions from our audience as possible. So let's make this rapid fire. I'm going to pose a question to you. You're going to answer it as fast as possible. Are you ready? Okay, Anne, what advice do you have for career changers and how to facilitate a transition into a different phase or professional setting?
Pay attention to the itch. When is that moment that you feel like there's something bigger, something else out there for you, right? It's so terrifying to think about pivoting or change, but pay attention to that feeling that's like, this isn't right. I got to look somewhere else.
Okay, Sarita, do you think people will look at me in a weird way as a female wanting to be working in a medical genetic research lab? My female genetics professor is my inspiration to possibly go that route. Is there still judgment?
Don't listen to the judgment. Don't listen to those voices. Be confident, move forward, show them what you're made of.
Advocating for yourself always sounds easier than it is. I often feel like I'm fluffing my feathers or trying to show off when really I'm just trying to show my worth. What tips do you have for getting better at being your best advocate, Rhonesha?
I would say definitely practice with a friend that you trust. Do some phone rehearsals the day before and take yourself out of it. You know, if you think about it thinking, oh, this is me trying to talk about how great I am. No, it's actually you as maybe an underrepresented person. If you're a woman in your field, opening a door for the next generation. You know, you don't get what you ask for. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what you ask for. And I learned that early on. The Emmy Award that I won in my career, I actually had to ask for it. And I spoke up just because I thought about, like I was talking about before, the sacrifices that were made for me to even be in a newsroom in the first place. Like I had to raise my hand and show the work. Do the work, but show the work. And it's not about you bragging. It's about you getting what you deserve. And what they don't teach you in school is that you have to ask for it in the real world. And that's normal and it's okay.
Love it. Okay, final question. There's a positioning opening up at my current organization. Some may feel I'm not qualified because they don't have a master's degree. Would it be best to ask to be an interim manager to show I can do the job? Anyone on that?
No, just pitch yourself.
I agree.
This is not the time to do half steps. This is and frankly, let someone else decide that you need to walk before you can run. You go out there and pitch your idea, your vision, that you are the right person to do it. And if somebody says, okay, look, call me back in a year, call them back in a year.
All right, well, I can tell that the Girl Scouts definitely picked the right people for this job because all of you have been phenomenal on this panel. So much valuable wisdom and advice. And Rhonesha, Sarita, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I loved it.
Rebecca, you are an incredible moderator. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thanks to all of you for the excellent questions. I'm going to turn it back over to Judith now.
Thank you, everyone, for inviting the Girl Scout Network into your homes. I'm Ava. As you may know, Girl Scouts is a nonprofit and the largest girl-serving organization in the world. Girl Scouts is where many female CEOs, astronauts, and more than half of our nation's female governors started their journeys to success, on which they've met their goals to hold office and represent their communities. If you believe in our mission of developing the next generation of leaders, we hope you'll consider becoming a lifetime member. This $400 tax-deductible donation, $200 if you're an alum under the age of 30, includes a variety of benefits and discounts, including invitations to special events and 20% off from select female-founded startups until March 2022. It's never been a better time. Sign up before June 10th, and you'll also get a tote bag to show the world your support. But best of all, $25 of your dues automatically fund a year of Girl Scouting for a girl in an underserved community in your area. Since January 2019, this has resulted in more than 28,000 girls being involved in Girl Scouts whose families would not otherwise have been able to afford the cost. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and we look forward to welcoming you back in the future. Our next event, Taking Charge of Your Well-Being, will take place on Wednesday night, featuring a truly stellar panel of Girl Scout alums that you won't want to miss. You can register for this important discussion about how to take stock of your own wellness and make steps towards improvements at girlscouts.org/campfirechat.